frequent that we hear from customers. We heard you on public radio today. More than any other thing that we do to promote our business, it
Ready? Yep. Here we go. All right, I'm going to call the March 24th Committee of the Whole to order. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderperson Bellinger.
Here.
Alderperson Borse.
Here.
Alderperson Close.
Here.
Alderperson Decker.
Here.
Alderperson Gravine.
Here.
Alderperson Heidemann.
Here.
Alderperson Menzer.
Here.
Alderperson Mitchell.
Excused.
Alderperson Perella. Alderperson Rust.
Present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm looking for approval of the minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting from November 5th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving those minutes, state aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Those minutes are approved. All right, so some announcements here first before we get into the items. First, I will state that staff, we have 2 staff that are dedicated to taking notes and from suggestions this evening for the zoning ordinance. And then otherwise, I will turn this over to Attorney Majerus.
Thank you. So tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. This is the body of council, but it is not council taking formal action. So the committee members, the alderpersons, will be having a discussion and listening to public comment. Staff will be taking notes on the preferences of the majority of the common council via the committee of the whole discussion and incorporating those into the next draft of the zoning code. Committee of the whole is not approving the zoning code tonight. Committee of the whole is simply discussing it and taking feedback. Committee of the whole will then refer it back to the common council or will table it for another committee of the whole meeting if that is what the body chooses. Either way, it will have to go back to council at some point before adoption. It will then have to be referred to the Plan Commission before adoption and then referred back to the common council for adoption. At any step in that process, we may add another committee of the whole meeting if the committee of the whole chair deems it appropriate and necessary. We will have public comment this evening, 3 minutes per person. We will have a presentation from the primary drafter of the zoning code, Sam Schultz, who is present in the room. We will also have a brief history of the project presented by Director Zeinert. I think that covers it.
Thank you, Attorney Majerus. And then for just a brief history of this process, I'm going to direct to Director Zeinert.
Hello all, thank you for being here today. I just want to walk through the timeline here to show how we all got here today. As many of you know, I started with Sheboygan in April of last year, so I'm just under 1 year here. So I just want to offer some historical context and things of that nature. The previous director, Diane McGinnis Casey, that is who started this project. I was able to go through her email correspondence to kind of get some historical context when it comes to here, or it comes to this project. On September 23rd, 2024, Diane McGinnis Casey, the previous director, had initiated a meeting with Von Briesen and Roper. The staff there, Sam Schultz, the consultant that's sitting behind me, was present. Attorney Chuck Adams was present, Mayor Sorensen, the zoning administrator, and also assistant to the city administrator, Marie Foss. Once again, September 23rd, 2024. Then moving to October of 2024, Diane McGinnis Casey had selected Von Briesen to move forward with the zoning code rewrite. She then had chose Sam Schultz, once again the consultant on this project. The review process then had started November of 2024. Schultz then had met with the zoning administrator to talk about the updates and things needed. The biggest concerns discussed there is making sure that the zoning code aligns with state statutes. Part of the zoning code is out of compliance, so we're looking to come into compliance there. Then I started with the city of April of 2025, and then from that point forward, the zoning code update was then brought forward to the Plan Commission. The first presentation was August 12th of 2025. The second presentation of the draft zoning code then is October 14th, also at Plan Commission. The third presentation of the drafted code was then presented at December 9th, 2025. The Plan Commission votes on the drafted code December 23rd, 2025. I will say that meaning the Plan Commission did have several amendments to that code. On January 9th, 2026, the zoning code then goes back to Plan Commission. The mayor requested that the draft zoning code go back to staff and go back to Plan Commission based on community dialogue and frustrations and things of that nature. From January 10th to March 9th, staff had spent time editing the zoning code, going line by line. Once again, the zoning code is now publicly available for review in that scenario. Committee of the Whole finds us here today on March 24th, just as Attorney Majerus alluded to. There might be a second Committee of the Whole to talk about updates and things of that nature. Something that I really want to echo is that this is a living document. I wasn't here prior to April of 2025, so I don't know why the code wasn't annually updated. However, that's something that staff hopes and continues to do. I think all of us are changing. The world is much different than it was 6 months ago to today. So making sure that the code evolves with us and not just sits on a shelf. That's something that staff is looking to do. I know Sam will highlight different adjustments and things that the code or the proposed code has to make updating it far more easier. With that being said, Chair, I would defer to you, but I would welcome for the consultant to come and speak.
Thank you, Director Zeinart. We will move on to item number 4, presentation by Sam Schultz, introducing draft zoning code. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam. I'm a Land Use and Development Advisor at Von Briesen and Roper out of our Milwaukee office. I'm a certified urban planner that works with the attorneys there, and we do a lot of zoning code work for communities, both in the writing process, as we do today, and also the administration process. So just want to get out on the front end. We want to create something that's usable for the city in the drafting, not just something that's theoretical. When we were brought on to start this project, we had some project goals laid out for us. The first being mainly streamline administration and development procedures, removing those barriers for property owners and reducing government red tape. This is a pretty common one that we see across communities that we work. But over time, codes, as they grow older, they get Band-Aids on Band-Aids. And sometimes it's cleanest to look at a little bit more of a refresh to kind of pair back to community goals and objectives and reduce some of that red tape that's built up over time. Included in that, which I'll get into, are recommendation for staff review for by right decisions, reduced legal uncertainty, and flexible standards for complex infill and redevelopment projects. Oftentimes right now, you're running those through planned development districts or other kind of ad hoc decisions, which can be difficult to administer, particularly over decades and decades. So getting back to incorporating standards that we'll talk about today that are more objective and less subjective are really important. Next, acknowledging mainly for you all levy limit considerations. The only way to maintain current level of services per state statute is to grow through net new construction. So the zoning code plays a piece in your budget decisions through land use policy. Next, allowing sensitive infill growth, matching neighborhood environment. So we've kind of broken it out into, suburban, urban, industrial, downtown type districts. A lot of the movement in zoning is moving towards regulating things by intensity rather than a strict separation of uses, or what we call Euclidean zoning. So that more intensity-based focus tends to be a little bit more sensitive to context and neighbors, and makes it easier for example, a business to operate in an existing business space without needing numerous kind of special approvals from, the Plan Commission, for instance. Then moving on to add objective site design standards. So, a code is only as good as the standards included in it. And right now, the difficulty with the City of Sheboygan's code is oftentimes it is that kind of subjective standard there. So moving towards objective landscaping and screening, outdoor lighting, parking and access, and kind of consolidated and universally applicable sections. So has two benefits. One, it's clear for developers, property owners, the Plan Commission, the Common Council to read and implement those standards, as well as staff when they're implementing those standards as well. It's kind of a black and white scenario there. If staff are reviewing a project for zoning code compliance, they're really calling balls and strikes instead of making up things whole cloth. And that is very similar to how current other city approval processes function. For example, when you submit a building permit, the building inspector, reviews it against the building code, and that's a pretty black and white process. If it complies with the building code, they issue you your building permit. The same thing here would apply to the zoning code. So the council is left to make legislative decisions, as Taylor just said. You're the ones setting policy, and then the staff are the ones implementing that policy in a very clear, concise manner. Next, incorporating modern zoning practices and policies to align updates with state law, which we'll get into a bit, and creating a framework for easier updates over time as city and market conditions change. Almost as important as the underlying regulations are the framework that we're proposing for the code. Right now, it's kind of a series of ordinances that require a lot of cross-referencing to look at whether a business expansion, for example, might be permissive, or if you want to add an addition on your home, you're looking across multiple different sections, which is tough. So we can unify those standards into clearer tables, single sections, so people aren't trying to become legal experts just to see if they can build an addition on their house. That framework is really very important, and some of the underlying reasons why we're doing something build off of that framework. So I'll run through that for you all in a sec. Talking about that recent legal context, so in 2017, Wisconsin Act 67 essentially created a lot of limitations in how municipalities can regulate conditional uses or any other special zoning permissions, as the statute reads. All of those conditional use decisions now must be based on substantial evidence, and it specifically says cannot include things like opinion, hearsay, or other types of kind of subjective standards as a reason to deny. So our legal takeaway at Von Briesen is by reducing that subjective approval process, these objective zoning decisions that I keep on mentioning are a lot easier to defend legally. You're reducing your risk. So not only are you providing clearer pathways for people to understand what they can do with their property, but you're also, kind of reducing that, we're going to just add a standard on at the finish line type of thing that can really frustrate a property owner. That is something that you all, kind of touched on in your code, but the updated framework really addresses more directly. So we're reducing conditional uses entirely and kind of taking them out. So instead, when we regulate a use, we set clear standards for that use in the ordinance. And if you find over time that those standards need to change, you all, as the Common Council, as well as the Plan Commission, the mayor, and the staff are all empowered to bring forward those changes to update the zoning code over time. time. So the idea is you're building in this process for feedback and continual update to keep the code more of a living document. And part of that is based on these limitations from 2017 Wisconsin Act 67 regarding conditional uses. The other one is 2023 Wisconsin Act 16, which really limited when a community can deny residential housing development applications. And it does that by saying when a permit is complete and submitted and it meets all the existing requirements at the time of application is filed, the city must grant that permit. It cannot add conditions to residential development applications after they submit it. So that really, again, reinforces having those standards proactive and objective up front, again, protects the city because if the statute says you can deny it or you can't deny it, you must approve it, you're going to be issuing a lot of permits. You got to make sure that the standards that you have are ones that you're comfortable with. All of those together, again, objective approval situations are more important. The way that's structured through the code is not by granting the city administrator unilateral power at all. What it does is empower the zoning administrator to make those kind of balls and strikes decisions, like I said. So if something complies with the code as it's written, they can, sign off on their zoning compliance. A lot of people don't know the development process, so they might be able to think they can just, break ground right after that. But there are a lot of other steps before and after that zoning compliance review that I think people forget about and are not subject to the zoning consideration, but are important to keep in mind. So some things that may happen before, the development or the zoning administrator signs off on that zoning compliance review could be a rezone of the property. That still by statute has to be considered at the Common Council and Plan Commission levels. It could be a comprehensive plan or a neighborhood plan or other sort of regional planning document. That still has to be considered at your level. It could be a subdivision plat. All platting decisions, whether certified survey maps or subdivision plats, still have to go to the Common Council. So this doesn't take away any of your statutory authority. In our opinion, it actually reinforces your statutory authority. So the decisions that are coming to the Plan Commission and the Common Council are the ones that they have legal standing to say yes or no. The attorney doesn't have to show up or the staff don't have to show up and advocate for something that nobody likes, but legally you have to approve. That puts everyone in a bad place. And so we're trying to avoid that situation entirely by defaulting to the reviews where you have the statutory authority to say yes or no. Moving on, I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the articles that you have here. There's really four main articles that we've broken the zoning code in, so that framework I was discussing. Article 1 is procedures and administration. So here we're cleaning up and consolidating how we're administering the zoning code through sections like introductions, applications, setting clear charts and graphs on decision-making authority, who can decide on what and how can they do it. And then it talks about individual application procedures. So how do we amend the zoning text? How do we amend the zoning map? How does staff complete zoning compliance review? How does staff complete sign permit applications and procedures? When someone appeals or asks for a variance, how does the Board of Appeals go through that process as well? So that's procedures and administration. Some takeaways from the draft code as it stands now. It conforms to the state law changes that I just talked about. It defers to staff when those objective standards are available, but it keeps the Plan Commission and Common Council approvals for those major decisions like rezones, text amendments, comp planning, platting, etc. Like I said, think of that staff level zoning review like how a building inspector already operates. So that zoning review is the same type of thing. And then, like I also just said, multiple bodies have the authority to initiate text amendments, including the Plan Commission and Common Council. So really focusing on keeping the document up to date over time. The second article is districts, so this talks about the purpose, the different zoning districts that the city has, the zoning map, its interpretation, and then the lot and structure regulations regarding, setbacks, height limits, bulk standards for buildings. We put an example of the draft zoning districts in here. We did a little bit of consolidation to consolidate some of the similar districts. by that intensity standard and local context. So you can see here we've broken it down into open space, agricultural, estate neighborhood, suburban corridor, which allows both residential and commercial along those corridors, urban neighborhood, urban corridor, again, same mixed use availability, urban downtown, when you're in the downtown, your industrial parks, and then natural resource protection overlay district. Also, planned development districts are still available to the council, but our hope is that with these updates, they'll be utilized less frequently and for kind of more large-scale campus-type developments when a planned development district is more applicable in those circumstances. Other takeaways on Article 2 are those unified lot and structure regulation tables. They're not in the thing here, but you can see in your draft zoning text that lot and structure table. So if you find that a setback isn't working for property owners, either you're getting a lot of variances at the Board of Appeals or you as alders are getting a lot of complaints, there's a single place for you to go in and amend that. You don't need to cross-reference of various different text sections. It's literally as simple as just updating a chart. So hopefully the ease of updating this and keeping it updated over time will be easier for you all as legislators. Article 3, uses, talks about the use table, interpretation of those uses and their guidelines, and then specific use standards within it. So we unified and simplified many of the use categories and then put in specific regulations when needed. Some of those come in from your existing code and some of them are new. A good example is outdoor seating areas within the A2 use category, which is food and drink uses. A benefit to this approach is also it more closely matches the state building code use categories. So there's a little bit of synergy between those two codes. If you're trying to open a business in an existing area, now the zoning classifications and approvals you need will more closely align with the building code regulations that you'll have. It eliminates conditional uses, as I discussed, and it also permits additional types of housing by right with specific standards attached. This is a takeaway that we discussed a lot at the Plan Commission level, but allowing things like townhomes, both condo, owner-occupied and rental, accessory dwelling units, cottage courts, which are kind of groupings of smaller homes around a central green space. All of those are allowed with those specific standards. So it just kind of broadens the options for people to develop and redevelop within the city, specifically regarding housing. And then finally, we get into Article 4, which are those citywide design regulations. So utility service, intersection visibility, signs, architectural regulations, historic preservation regulations, parking and access, landscaping and screening, outdoor lighting, public art, and alternative compliance procedures when they can meet other goals and objectives for a little bit of that flexibility. That unified set of design guidelines is applicable on most properties unless it's specifically called out. Everyone plays by the same rules, so it's a lot more evenly distributed across the city. It's easier to update over time, again, because those regulations are in a single place. If you want to update the standards for a use category, it lives in a specific spot. You don't have to cross-reference it. If you want to update a specific landscaping standard, when you update that standard, it'll generally apply to all properties within the city. And it's easier to cross-reference. We've included content-neutral sign regulations. This was due to a ruling at the federal Supreme Court level that said the city can really only regulate signage based on time, place, and manner. You can't regulate it on content, which includes some difficult conversations, but we have to follow with kind of those, First Amendment right, free speech regulations from the Supreme Court. Increased focus on clear pedestrian connectivity. One of the things we heard through the process is to emphasize better parking lot design. Sometimes that's a connection between the front door of a business through a parking lot to the public sidewalk. Other times it is how those interact. Maybe it's by including bicycle racks or other types of things. So those standards live there. We've refined some of the parking standards to set minimums and maximums that we think are a little bit more in line with current market and parking lot standards. We've set a lot of landscaping standards and screening standards that are really focused on the public's view into a property. So looking at things like vehicular use area screening, outdoor storage and work area screening, mechanical equipment screening. So it's a little bit less prescriptive inside a person's property, but from the view of an adjacent property or the public, that is where we're setting more strict kind of objective standards. And within those, we also like to provide options. So you'll see in some of them, there's 2 or 3 options of how a property owner can meet those screening standards, again, to provide kind of that context and flexibility when properties differ. Then finally, we included some dark sky lighting regulations. Many communities are moving towards more sensitive outdoor lighting regulations as LED lights have become mostly cheaper for people to install. You can put out a lot more light for a lot less money now. So these are more objective standards based on reducing light pollution both at the property line and that kind of sky glow light pollution as well. Next up, we were asked by the staff to look at a couple different property scenarios of what does this mean for an average property owner. So here on 5th Street, there's an existing structure that's kind of tucked up against the property line. Your current code has an aggregate setback, so 15 feet on either side of the property, which really means it's very difficult for this person to expand more than a foot or 2 from their house, even though they have a good amount of space between their south property wall and the property line. The new code sets less strict property setbacks for it. So you can see here the street yard setbacks are now 10 feet minimum, 20 feet maximum. The side yards go down to 5 feet. The rear yard has a 15-foot minimum. But we also are setting some impervious surface coverage maximums and building height regulations as well. What that does is in this red area here, you can kind of generally see the increased buildable area that this property owner would have under the proposed new code. Building off of that, there's a parcel here on 22nd that is basically unbuildable under the current setback regulations. Really, that side yard setback of 25 feet because it's a corner lot, it has 2 street yards, makes it very difficult to develop, plus a 25-foot rear yard setback. Again, this is one of those aggregate setbacks, so it's 25 and 5 on the sides for a 30-foot total aggregate setback. And you can see here, it's very difficult to build a house. Habitat was apparently interested in this lot to build, but you would need likely numerous zoning variances from setbacks just to put an urban house on this lot. When we talk about context, we also like to look at the surrounding properties. You can see just to the property to the east doesn't meet any of these setbacks. So the current zoning regulations are not actually sensitive to the existing built environment, which is a good key of perhaps some of these regulations, they might have gotten stricter over time or been implemented over time in a way where these properties were rezoned. Effectively, it made it unbuildable. So under the current draft zoning ordinance, you can see with our reduced setbacks, we have a much larger buildable area here. And, in my professional opinion, the lot would be much easier for Habitat or a similar property owner to build, a detached house on this property under the draft code. I also should note this lot is legal nonconforming, even though it's existed in very similar to its neighbors, because under the current zoning district, it has a minimum 6,000 square foot limit. So by itself, it's already legal nonconforming, where we've reduced some of those property size regulations down to 3,600 square feet. So trying to build in more lots are just kind of allowed to be as they currently exist. Finally, we heard from staff that there's been a lot of issues at the staff level of denying people who want to either replace or build on front porches, which are generally something that many municipalities encourage, right? You get more eyes on the street, kind of provides both improvements to a property as well as makes a home generally look nicer and feel more neighborly. Well, you can see here under the current zoning setbacks here, not only is the front porch on this property not legal, the front setback actually goes like a third of the way into the house itself. It's probably only 5-10 feet away from the property line. So you can see here, if you were looking to, if it was torn down by a tornado, legal nonconforming statutes would apply and they could rebuild it as is here. But if a property owner voluntarily took it down to try to rebuild it in a nicer manner, then the staff have to apply the current zoning standards, and they couldn't allow this without a zoning variance. So under the new code, we have that 10-foot proposed front setback, which you can see is much closer to the local context here, about exactly where it's at. And so if they did take down that front porch to rebuild it, they would have a lot more flexibility in how and where they could do it in a way that makes sense for the current aspect of the property. So with that, that's kind of my brief run through of the draft zoning ordinance. Again, flexibility, long-term standards. I don't think this draft should or is or will be perfect, but I think the framework it sets up empowers you all to make it more perfect over time. In many communities where we work, staff, as Taylor said, are doing 6-month or annual updates to their code. So it lives and breathes and changes over time. So we really think this allows you to do that. If there's a new use that everyone is up in arms about or a new use that everyone loves, this allows you to incorporate standards for those uses in a clear, decisive document, and make sure the city stays flexible for development decisions in the long run.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so I'm going to encourage everybody that's staying in the back there. We do have seating on this side of the space if you so want. Over here, to your right, my left. Alrighty, so with that, we're going to move on to item number 5. I'm going to read it so that we all are on the same page. Attendee participation will occur after presentations have been concluded. Attendees wishing to participate should sign in at the podium prior to the meeting commencement and will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Attendee participation will end no later than 7:30. So with that being said, I'll have the city clerk call our first attendee.
Thank you, Alder Rust. Jim Williams.
Jim, just give your name, address, and you got 3 minutes. Oh,
Oop, here we go. Jim Williams, 2425 South 11th Street in Sheboygan. I first want to thank the committee for doing this. I think a 30-year rewrite is probably a little overdue. In the last couple of days, I have read about a community in Tennessee that's dealing with a low-grade uranium enrichment center that they want to build. And I've also read about detention centers being built in small communities. And so I think as you look at the code, I just ask you to think globally about some of the issues that confront us now, and then things that may show up that we aren't even aware of, and how fast those change. You've dealt with data centers in the code, and I really do appreciate that. The one thing that I wanted to ask about is I have read about removal of environmental elements to the code. I would just ask that somehow you show what those were and what they are. The red line, and I'm no expert in codes, the red line is a decent redlining, but it doesn't capture some of the things that may have been in the code previously pertaining to environmental concerns. That's it. Thank you.
thank you, Jim.
Next person is Lisa Salgado.
All right, Lisa, name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Lisa Salgado, 4th Street. Dear Common Council, I'm asking you to stop this full zoning ordinance rewrite. There was never a resolution approving the $60,000 to $70,000 cost under Wisconsin Statute 6211. You control city finances, not staff. If a contract was entered into above that authority, then that was executed beyond legal limits. On top of that, the contract itself was never formally brought before you for approval. That alone should raise serious concerns. We do not need a full rewrite. This ordinance has been updated over time through amendments. It hasn't been 30 years. That process works. What's being proposed now isn't just a cleanup, it's a complete shift in how power is handled in this city. This draft strips authority away from elected officials, the Plan Commission, and this council, and places it into the hands of one unelected staff member. This is not how local government is supposed to function. That removes accountability. It also removes transparency. Projects will no longer appear in public meeting packets. That means no public hearings, no visibility, and no opportunity for residents to understand or question developments in their own neighborhoods. This is not modernization. This is exclusion. There has been talk about Act 16, which may limit local discretion on some compliant residential projects, but that is not the same as giving one city official broader control over zoning decisions. Those are two separate issues. The question is whether Sheboygan is going beyond what state law requires and shifting too much power away from elected officials and the public. Just because a state law changed for certain residential developments does not automatically justify a full zoning rewrite that concentrates more authority in city staff. Citizens expect checks and balances. No one person should have unilateral control over development decisions in this city. So I ask you, what is the benefit of removing oversight from elected officials and the public? This model is highly unusual and frankly dangerous. You have the authority to stop this, and you should. And are we allowed questions? It said in the packet we were allowed questions.
You may ask questions within your 3 minutes.
So yes or no, would a data center be approved by the zoning administrator alone as an as-of-right use if it meets the qualifications in this zoning ordinance on an industrial zone parcel?
That'll be addressed later. That specific question with data centers, as of tonight, it's being addressed tonight.
Say that again?
That data centers will be addressed tonight, later this evening. We're writing down the questions right now, and we're going to address them individually. Thank you. Next.
Frank Polzan. Frank?
Sure, be quick. Be quick, yep. Yes. Here, do you just want to?
Liz is getting.
Okay, there we go. All right. Okay. Unfortunately, two of these copies have a little coffee stain at the bottom. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No disrespect.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Frank Kozan.
Oh, go to the.
2829 Erie Avenue, a resident of Sheboygan, 50 years. When I first came here in 1975, they were building a fountain on 8th Street. The fountain was to memorialize the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It is confusing to me that on the eve of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, there is a proposal to invest in the piece in Fountain Park that would eliminate that fountain. The grandchildren living today should live to see the 300th anniversary. And if this fountain is eliminated, they would not know that we memorialized the 200th anniversary only to abolish that memorial in the 250th anniversary. So I think it's ironic and uncalled for. I've passed out a handout. I wish I had one for everybody. If the alders will please take a look at the back side. There is a picture, I'll describe to the people, of a man standing in
in a chasm in the earth that has been split apart by the earthquake. He could extend both arms, and there he would barely touch the sides. And above it says, earthquakes really do split the earth, not just shake it. There's a reason for that, because if you look at the other side, you will see our fountain, the current fountain, and I have written a few lines of text. The jagged, irregular basins represent the power of an earthquake, ripping the earth apart. The Declaration of Independence was a force that would shatter monarchies and empires. The forceful gushing spray of water, we're all familiar with that. You've all seen it. Perhaps you were puzzled by it the way I was until I understood what the landscape architect was trying to drive at. That gushing water is the opposite of genteel, graceful, streaming arcs, and it represents the upwelling of the spirit of freedom and the unleashing of its power that would reject monarchs and authoritative societies. The fountain is a representation of an event so cataclysmic that it shattered the structures of societies that repressed the human spirit, and the world would never be the same again. The colonists said to England, no more from your king, no more from your parliament. Besides, you're 2,000 miles away. They had the nerve to do that. And the architect who designed this fountain said, I'm not designing something that memorializes the document that's under glass in Washington, not Independence Hall, not...
Frank, that's 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
you.
So...
All right. Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
Mark Mahoney.
Hello, Mark Mahoney, 832 North 6th Street, Sheboygan. The last time I spoke here, I talked about balance, the need to have a balance as decisions are made. And I just want to speak briefly on one balance issue. Certainly, everyone would agree that the city is aggressive about development and building. But on the other side, when we talk about balance, my interest is making sure that the interest in development and growth is restricted by those areas where we don't want development. And those would be the environmentally sensitive areas. And I know we have those mapped out, which is fine, and that should continue. But then, as I looked at the new zoning code, I looked for provisions that were in the old code, and I could not find them in the new code. And these were specific provisions in 15, 507, and 505 and 15204 that deal with woodlands, lakeshore, and wetlands. The woodland one says woodlands that remain undisturbed with any cutting limited to selective or conditional uses specifically authorized. Clear cutting is only conditionally permitted and subject to mitigation requirements. Lakeshore overlay, undisturbed lakeshore areas. Lakeshore shall remain in an undisturbed state except for extremely limited uses permitted under the ordinance. And then finally, wetlands, permanently protected green spaces. Wetlands are treated as permanently protected green space where disturbance is permitted except as specifically allowed under certain sections. So if these are still in the code, the new code, proposed code, and I've missed them, good, let me know. But if they're not in there, it'd be interesting to know why they're not showing up this time. There is a new provision, which is in 101D7, which states, protect and enhance environmentally sensitive areas, groundwater resources, and other natural resources. It's possible that is meant to replace those specific provisions that dealt with all of those three important areas. But this is so vague, protect and enhance environmentally sensitive areas. It looks like perhaps that would be a way to just get things approved that perhaps couldn't have been approved in the past. So that would be my balance issue for tonight. And again, hopefully we can look to see why those aren't in the code, or perhaps get them back in if they're missing now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Dotz. Mary Dotz.
Good evening. My name is Mary Dotz, Los Angeles Avenue. Dear Common Council, let's talk about what this zoning rewrite actually allows, especially when it comes to data centers. Right now, data centers are being grouped into a broad industrial category and allowed as of right. At the same time, this new code combines multiple industrial categories, suburban, urban, and heavy, into one. That removes important distinctions and protections. We all know we cannot outright ban data centers if they meet criteria, but we can regulate them, and we should. Other communities are doing exactly that. We can require developers to pay for grid upgrades, water and sewer expansion, and road improvements, so taxpayers are not subsidizing private projects. We can enforce strict noise limits with decibel caps like Virginia, limit evaporative cooling by requiring air-cooled systems to reduce water like Mesa, Arizona, and mandate on-site wastewater treatment before discharge like Quincy, Washington, and Phoenix. We can also set architectural design standards. And most importantly, we can require conditional use approvals like Chicago, so projects must go through Plan Commission, Common Council, and public review. That gives you legal discretion to say no when a project does not align with our community goals. But this draft removes that discretion. So I have some questions if any of you want to answer within my 3 minutes. Where is the moratorium while we study this? Anyone? Good.
I'd like to answer that. I've been trying to get one passed or get one put in front of the council for several months.
No. Gravine, this is attendee participation. We will answer these questions after.
Where are the protections for Lake Michigan, our drinking water? Why were environmental safeguards stripped out from the current version? Why were we removed from Green Tier and Sustainability Task Force dissolved? And where is the redlined version of this ordinance compared to our current one? Where are the supporting documents that were supposed to be compiled by Elise Rose to start this zoning rewrite as required by the ordinance itself? These are not small questions. These are foundational. And you can fix this. City Council, you can stop this, and you must. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Felbab. Felbab.
Julie, name and address, please.
My name is Julie Felbab, 119 Menominee Drive.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
These comments are for the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am here on behalf of Friends of the Black River Forest. Our attorney also sent a letter to the committee of the whole outlining our concerns in more detail. Please ensure that letter from Pine Spock by Krista Westenberg is entered into the record and you get a copy. We appreciate that the city has pulled back on its original drafting ordinance. There are still problems with the new drafting ordinance. These are explained in the letter from our attorney. Friends of the Black River Forest has, as you know, opposed the use of land within and north of Kohler Andre State Park for a private golf course proposed by the Kohler Company. Kohler Company obtained a conditional use permit, or CUP, from the city for the golf course on November 20th, 2020, about 5.5 years ago. As you all know, construction never began on that course. After an extension was granted in 2024 that Friends of the Black River Forest and others opposed, we understand some within the city believe the CUP is in effect. This is true in spite of the fact that Kohler Company has told the city it plans major changes to the golf course, changes that are not authorized by its 2020 CUP. Some parts of the zoning ordinance change seem designed to allow Kohler to obtain a modification without going through any further city process. We don't believe that is allowed, but that is what Section 103L of the new ordinance seems designed to do. Who wrote this section? Why is it in the ordinance? Please see the letter from our attorney for further information about that and other changes that are of concern and the revisions we request. We do appreciate the new draft keeps the zoning administrator separate from the city administrator. We also have some concerns about the process. First, why isn't the comprehensive plan amendment being done before the zoning amendment takes effect? Second, can the city speed up responses to open records requests? The Friends have made multiple requests that are still outstanding, even though they would help us comment on the zoning ordinance changes. Some of these go back to last year. Third, the city should also be more clear that there will be future public comment opportunities on the zoning ordinance, including a public hearing. The letter from our attorney explains these concerns. Passing a new zoning ordinance is a significant decision for the city and people with property and environmental issues. Please make further changes to the ordinance to address our concerns and fix the process. Thank you.
Mandolin Tempest.
My name is Mandolin Tempest. I reside at 5 Beechwood Drive. The rewrite zoning ordinance adds a new industrial land use of data center without meeting meaningful regulations or performance standards regarding data centers. Proposed data center project can now consist of more than one building, can consist of more than one or more large data center structures, can occupy 30-acre to 1,000+ acre site. The draft ordinance imposes more regulations upon animals than data centers. We are an agricultural state, and you propose more regulations on my yard and my garden than what you have even as any plan that I can find anywhere on any data center. This affects our groundwater, this affects our children, chemicals, everything. This is not something that needs to just get pushed through, and I urge you to honestly sit down and look at everything that could happen. This is all too new for us to be making any decisions on. You need regulations, and you need strong regulations. We live next to the greatest body of fresh water. That's not something to take lightly. That is a responsibility that we need to have for our generation and future generations, and I urge you all to do that. Part of the problem with the city that I have been seeing recently is that the lack of accountability, the lack of communication, and the lack of putting it in layman's terms. And that is a responsibility of our elected officials. You are elected to do that. You are elected to communicate with your constituents, and I urge you to actually answer your emails. have been waiting for an answer from my alderman since March 9th. The previous one to that was February. The previous one to that was January. When I ask you follow-up questions, I expect to be answered. I do not expect to sit in an outbox waiting to get what? So I have to come here on my time off. Come here, miss my dinner with my family, to come here and ask you questions that could have been answered over an email. That is where the anger for your entire city is coming from. You are not listening to your people, and it needs to happen. Regulations are important, and I urge you to put referendums on votes instead of just pushing things through. Referendums are important to happen. Each person in this city has a voice, and they actually need to be heard. I urge any new landscaping and development consider mosses and clover instead of grasses. They're better for our environment. Maybe you need to look into outside of the box solutions. Thank you.
Tracy Burnett.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Burnett, and I live at 1229 North 4th Street. First, I'd like to start by thanking the city, the mayor in particular, and alders for pursuing what are considered to be housing-friendly or housing-ready policies in this new zoning code, namely legalizing accessory dwelling units, decreasing minimum lot sizes, and allowing duplex or multifamily houses. These are important steps for sustainably and incrementally increasing our housing stock. So very important for our city. Many of us would love to see these come to light, but the zoning code itself seems to be hampered by the ongoing issues that seem to be easily resolvable, many of which we've heard here this evening. The first is consolidation of power. Again, it seems like these are things we could have within our code that would make people feel comfortable moving forward with it so that we can make sure that these important changes for things such as housing come to light in the city. So consolidation of power. The second, again, we've been hearing them all night long, are safeguards around data centers. Nothing by right? We would like to have some public discussion on this. Removal of environmental protections. And I want to commend Mark and other city members here who are speaking, because trying to figure out what it said in the old code and what it said in the new code is no small feat. It's been really, really difficult to try to do that. I'm trying to follow it, but it's been really hard to do that. So that's something, so every citizen here should be commended for trying to follow along. It's not easy at all. And the third one is, the removal of environmental protections, and then again, just communicating in layman's terms was mentioned before, but just making sure that for us citizens who are trying really hard to be engaged, just making it easier to do so. And I know it would even be easier for the alders. I know it hasn't been easy for you either to try to track like what's in the old code and what's in the new code. So we're all on the same team trying to get this right for the city. So thank you where it's due, but also we can do better for our citizens all around. Thank you.
Mary Lynn Donahue.
Thank you. My name is Mary Lynn Donahue. I live at 418 St. Clair Avenue in Sheboygan. I have 3 points. The first is, and building on what Tracy Burnett said, the zoning code process has been what the Scots call a clish-maclaver. It's a big fat mess. It is very difficult for those of us who are interested to trace the old code, the changes, the new changes, the changes after that. Perhaps there has not been this kind of community interest in zoning codes, and the consultant is not used to it, but use this as a lesson in how you can clearly put out and explain really complicated issues. Number 2, that has to happen within the context of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, the provisions in the current proposed code for AI data centers are laughably inadequate. I'm so glad to hear from Attorney Majerus that there's going to be additional time for discussion of really important issues. AI data centers are to me, a bit of irrational exuberance. If they do come to our community, they need to come with very specific protections. We know this from our friends in Port Washington who now have had to shut down construction at night because of the incredible noise and light pollution. The third piece, the third point, and this is a tough one, you've lost our trust. It seems as if we don't trust anything that comes out of the city. And I'm not speaking about alders, but about staff and consultants. Trust is so hard to build, and it takes a long time to build it. When you do that, when you build that trust, sadly, it doesn't take much to make it go away. Now, the good news is, for the city, there are certain specific things that you can do to begin to rebuild that trust. The first is a moratorium on AI data construction until the zoning code is implemented with approval. I understand we have an alderperson who is working on that, and that's something that you can clearly just step forward and do to begin to reestablish trust. Excuse me. You can enact an ordinance or a resolution banning non-disclosure agreements. This is a basic step forward. These are new and they are destructive to the democratic process. My time is almost up, but those are two clear ways that you can start to rebuild that trust. I would urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Mentink. Liz?
All right, Liz, name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Liz Mentink of 2109 David Avenue.
Thank you.
Probably not quite as reformed as, formal as most of the other people here. I don't necessarily have anything super written out in front of me and planned, but it concerns me, and maybe I'm not as knowledgeable about a lot of these things, and I want to fully acknowledge that. But it seems that there's to be quite a bit of power invested in a single individual here, and giving a lot of power to one person to regulate what I can do on my land. And I hear, wanting to increase the ability of being able to build houses, which is awesome. But also, if you're going to regulate what people are doing with their houses, in terms of landscaping, in terms of animals that I have in my yard, that's of deep concern to me personally as a lower class individual. Me and my husband spent years saving our money up to buy our house, and to build up a large garden in our yard that both supports us financially in terms of being able to feed my young daughter here, and I'm soon going to have another baby, be able to feed our family healthy food. That would be a lot more difficult for us to buy. With the economy being what it is right now, it's very concerning to me to hear, a couple months ago there was a proposal to bring down the amount of garden space you could have in your front yard to 25%. My whole front yard is garden space. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort over the years that we've had our house into what is an investment. It cost us money up front for what I thought was going to be years and years of being able to make sure that no matter what the economic conditions are, that my family would be fed well. And not only that, but in my adventures of growing our garden and the number of people that I've met, the community that I've built, the interactions I've had with people. You talked about neighborliness in terms of building porches and things. My garden has been a way for me to reach out to people, meet people, build community. And it would be, I mean, my daughter loves going out in the garden and being able to just grow her own food and see, we have native plants too, and with the environmental destruction going on at large around the world, being able to have some native plants where she can see the caterpillars feeding on, the milkweed and...
Liz, you're over 3 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly Meller.
Kimberly Meller, 515 Columbus Avenue, Sheboygan. Thank you, Common Council. I'm going to speak about my dislike of large-scale data centers. The only true employment impact on one municipality will be in the construction, but it is only if a deal is struck in a way that guarantees all subcontracted firms are locally owned. The Ohio River Valley Institute, a policy think tank that analyzes data center and energy projects throughout Appalachia and the Northeast, published data in 2025 to demonstrate that employees-data centers started at 20.4, employees to data centers started at 20.4 in 2015, around the time data centers were an emergent market. In 2024, full year numbers show a data center has an average of 10 employees. When we talk about long-term direct employment impact, a data center is not a shining example of long-term. Indirect employment impact is largely temporary. It takes a finite time to construct a data center. Local construction firms, unless specified in the contract with the municipality, have no right to win a subcontract award. They must bid with large competitors from neighboring states who are fully equipped and hungry to win those awards. Therefore, indirect construction employment is not likely to result in substantial tax-based growth. The Sheboygan Power Plant is more likely to see job growth with more than 10 employees as compared to a data center. Ineffective tax incentives do not deliver promised economic benefits. Residents take on the incremental operating costs of the facility, while profits are extracted to mega corporations who are incorporated outside the state of Wisconsin. Those 10 full-time employees aren't going to increase the taxable base of the municipality more than the residents will be subsidizing the data center. Energy prices will rise unless the deal is constructed in a way that removes residents from being on the hook, at which point the locale is no longer attractive to the business proposition. Time and time again, data center investment ultimately results in 2 to 5 times the energy costs for residents and no net gains for the community. If everyone is paying $60 to $300 a month more in incremental energy fees, what the hell good is any tax incentive that doesn't exceed multiple thousands per year per household?
Kimberly, you're over 3 minutes.
The math is a no matter bad how you look at it.
You're over 3 minutes, Kimberly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roseanne Brandt.
All right, Roseanne, name, address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Roseanne Brandt, 1829 North 27th Place, Sheboygan.
Thank you.
I've got a first question is Von Bryson submitted a contract on October 11th, 24 with a project scope and a budget for the zoning ordinance rewrite. What is the resolution number for the date of that? And it was a $60,000 to $70,000 contract that was supposedly approved by the Common Council. Who authorized that expense? That's the first question I have. And the second, yes or no, would this new zoning ordinance take away the Plan Commission and Common Council's authority to vote on future private sector developments of commercial, industrial, and residential or mixed-use projects? And the last thing I wanted to say, what she was talking about with our alderman, I've been trying to get a hold of mine, Ryan, and if I call your number that they gave me, they say, what is the extension? How the hell do I know? It doesn't say your name, your number is this. Could you help me out with that?
Yes, so long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew Phillips. Drew.
All right, Drew, name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Yep, thank you. Name's Drew Phillips. I live at 928 Wisconsin Ave. I have a little mix of some positive and some constructive feedback. I really appreciate the city trying to listen. I've noticed more communication happening over the past few months on social media, public forums like this one, and a comprehensive plan that I attended. So an example of the city trying to improve at the comprehensive plan, people complained that the city wasn't taking notes, and now the city announced they're taking notes. So thank you for listening. So good job. Still more work to do, but thank you for those efforts so far. I also appreciate all the alders, city staff, and citizens who really care. Thank you so much. So I hope keep up the caring. I love it. Love to see it. So. Some positives, I think, from the new zoning code is it's great to see efforts to allow more housing to be built organically and by right, and modifications to be made to existing housing. The examples in the presentation were very good, so thank you for that. I think these efforts to reduce minimum lot size, setback requirements, increasing areas that allow duplexes, triplexes, and ADUs by right can help increase housing affordability for Sheboyganites. I have moving on to some constructive feedback, I have a slight definition concern for the data centers. It seems that the data center definition in the current zoning code seems to match any building that has any sort of networking equipment whatsoever. I teach computer science at Sheboygan Area School District. I have a server in my classroom. I'm sure the Sheboygan Area School District has servers downtown here. Other local businesses have servers in their office. And I think that would match the definition for data center in the current zoning code. And I think what people are more worried about is a much larger use case. So I just don't want those people and local businesses to be unnecessarily burdened by that definition. I don't know if they are. I'm just raising that concern. So, then lastly, so I've been talking to a lot of neighbors. I am running for local office. I've been talking to a lot of neighbors, and opposition of data centers is like super bipartisan. Like pretty much everybody agrees, including myself. And I think expressly prohibiting any data center by right is a great way to help get the good things in the zoning code passed and also reflect the will of Sheboyganites. So thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Clark.
All right, Rebecca, name, address, and you get 3 minutes.
Rebecca Clark, 735 Fairway Drive, 195 pages. This is going to be hard. But I just wanted to say the one thing that always occurred to me was I never understood the reason for the entire zoning code rewrite. We never got staff recommendations. I know you were talking about redoing the code for years, but to redo the whole code is a big deal. And the reason that it got so contentious is that you were going to do it without a public hearing. That's what was happening in January. And we gotcha, and we stopped it. But in the letter from Von Bryson, and Sam, it's good to see you. You've haunted my dreams. in the letter from Von Briesen, they promised to do a bunch of public hearings and stuff to coincide with the comprehensive plan, but that is not, in fact, what happened. And I do not understand why, as was addressed, Diane McGinnis-Casey, and I will be doing a public records request on those emails from September of 24, why would she go and get money from your capital improvement plan, $60,000, to hire Bay Lakes, and then turn around and request another $60,000 for Van Briesen to do a code rewrite that would supersede the comprehensive plan for an entire year? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. The point is, the statement that you do not update your code is false. That is totally false. In fact, in 2020, you redid a lot of Chapter 105. In fact, you had an ordinance which you passed to change the residency requirements for the Architectural Review Board. They no longer had to be a city resident. You passed it. So all this talk you said about we need to get rid of architectural review because we cannot find a quorum is false. You also updated the code back in 2020 to accommodate Act 67, which changed conditional use permits. You changed your planning commission to deal with those uses. So we're worried now about Act 16. You can amend the code. You better invite us. You better have a public hearing, but we can amend things as needed. Now, I'd like to go through page by page, but I think the issue is, as has already been stated, what would have been helpful, not just for me, but also for your plan commission, is to do this in a side-by-side comparison of the codes that we currently have and the codes that are changing. Because I can tell you right now, the preamble in the codes that you have online is really good, and I'd hate to lose it. It talks very eloquently about your comprehensive plan and how these things need to be tied together. The other issue is page 6, notices. I'd like that paragraph torn out. If the city staff writes a bad public hearing notice, you're basically saying we are not responsible, we can go ahead with the hearing anyway. Throw that out. I'm also asking that you keep the plan commission's powers as they are, okay? Not just with the Wisconsin statutes that's in the code right now. I know I'm out of time. If anyone else doesn't want to speak, I can keep going, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Peter Jacobs.
All right, Peter, name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Peter Jacobs, and I'm at 930 Meade Avenue. This rewrite is destructive to the democratic process of municipal government. The rewrite is neither a cleanup or streamlining. Significant regulatory authority is stripped from the elected officials with no discernible disclosure, frank discussion, or valid cause. The ordinance fails to uphold fundamental purpose of zoning. It provides no further protection of health, safety, and public welfare of your constituents. The city residents. The draft, I have 9 points here that the way this draft ordinance is presented to you. Number 1, it's presented to you as a done deal on the council agenda for approval as of January 5th, 2026. It was resubmitted as a revised rewrite last week, all done without public forum disclosing content and purpose of significant proposed ordinance changes. Number 2, it's presented to you without frank disclosure. The new ordinance strips the authority of both the Plan Commission and the City Council to oversee planning approvals and architectural plan review approvals for all commercial, industrial, and multifamily projects, including all TID subsidized multifamily projects, the Amazon project, the Kohler Golf Course project, and yes, any future data center projects. Number 3 is presented to you, and we've talked about this multiple times here tonight, without a red line of ordinance changes to plainly identify each ordinance regulatory change or addition, to flag every authority and approval changes. As mandated by the current zoning ordinance, the requirements for amending zoning ordinance. Number 4, it's presented to you without any planning department memorandum confirming validity of proposed changes to regulations and administrative authority. Planning department is actually failing to follow its own ordinance-mandated procedural requirements. Number 5, it's presented to you without document deliverables, as Von Briesen noted in their fee proposal of October 2024, which is required for full understanding of all proposed changes. Von Briesen did not include a report summary of all regulation and authority changes in the agenda packet. No multiple public forum meetings for discussion of proposed changes.
Peter, you're over 3 minutes.
Pardon me?
You're over 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin Brox.
All right, Robin, name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Robin Brox. I live at 415 Niagara Avenue. And I have not lived in Sheboygan a long time. I chose to live here because of Lake Michigan. So if you screw Lake Michigan with these data centers, I just don't see how you can live with yourselves. Also, smile more. You're representing us. You all look so unhappy to be here. You look grumpy and bored, and you have had side conversations while we have been speaking. Don't think we haven't noticed. You work for us. Citizens of Sheboygan do not want a zoning. Citizens of Sheboygan do not want a zoning czar. We want a committee. We want a planning committee. We want 2 separate committees that can work together, because that's how it's done. Not a single person having all this authority and then us getting told, oh no, you'll still vote on it. You're not going to vote on most of it. It's all going to be hidden. And innocent people are going to be harmed, because who can afford to live in Sheboygan anymore? Where are all the people coming from when there's nowhere to live? We need homes that cost $100,000, not $400,000. We need homes for the homeless. Homes for the homeless. We need homes for people that are non-white and working class. And those people vote. They might not be here in droves tonight, but they're listening. We're all paying attention. And we're all really, really disappointed. Profoundly disappointed. If you don't want to serve the people, resign.
Thank you.
Judy Poole.
All right, Judy, name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name's Judy Poole, and I live at 18 Ashwood Drive in Sheboygan. I probably have a different political point of view than most of the people in this room right now. However, I have found that I have 10% in common with them, which is enough to join together to address the City of Sheboygan issues that are important to both sides of the aisle. I have had the pleasure of sitting down and hearing about and discussing the history of the comprehensive plan and reasons why it is all of a sudden so important to get passed. I have read the entire red line version of the newly introduced zoning code, even though I don't understand most of it. I've sought out and listened to people who have knowledge and experience with these issues, along with the possibility of data centers coming to our area in the future. I attended the Bay Lakes presentation at Town Social, a spot in town I have never been to before. I realize everyone who spoke against the zoning being changed at this time had their own reasons for speaking against the plans, myself included. However, I now feel I have made several new friends. We may soon have completely opposite views on some upcoming issues, but I feel comfortable enough now to sit down over coffee or a Diet Coke and discuss our differences with no animosity. Tonight I feel it is important for the mayor, planning commission, and common council alders to realize these are not nonpartisan issues. Many on the far left, far right, and in between love the city and are wanting the best for it for our residents and our families. When we join together, this is a formidable force that should not be ignored. Consider holding off on these issues and consider not passing the zoning code in whole at this time. Amendments can always be made as we go. Resolutions can be offered and passed or denied. Thank you.
Maeve Quinn.
All right, Maeve, name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Maeve Quinn, and my address is 310 St. Clair here in Sheboygan. Good evening, and thank you for really allowing us this time to share our concerns and questions. I personally think that slowing down this process and really listening and incorporating our feedback really helps rebuild the trust that was mentioned in an earlier comment. To be honest with all of you, I have never really thought that much at all about city zoning ordinances. And in light of the ones that you're sort of looking at, some of which are over 30 years old, one can understand the need for an update. Our current ordinances does not mention any regulation whatsoever for a large AI data center. They just didn't really exist 30 years ago. So due to what quickly happened in a community south of us, this may be a reason why some citizens are here tonight. If you in this room are concerned about the potential of having a future large AI data center in Sheboygan, just quietly raise your hand, please. Thank you. In addition to my concern of the current city ordinance having no regulations for the large AI data center, I personally don't feel like I have the right background to share any advice of what should be in a new city zoning ordinance in order to protect a city from an AI data center. And this really concerns me. So I can't really offer you good feedback other than I'm concerned. I'm also really concerned that it seems as though some of the regulations in the current city ordinance have been changed or removed, but they're not noted on the 2 documents that were attached to the agenda. And so it's really confusing. For example, and I think it's been mentioned by several people tonight, the city website has a whole section, Article 105.6, Natural Resource Protection, on details regarding environmental protections for lakeshore protection, wetland protections, and public parks. And I can't find this information anywhere on the agenda that you have tonight, and that concerns me. And if that information has been removed, I really should see it on your document in red, and then if you have what you're going to replace it with, that should be in yellow, and I just don't see that anywhere. And then my final point is I do share some of the concerns about who is making some of the decisions. The version of the zoning ordinance shared tonight has very little mention of the Planning Commission. I actually counted it. It's 5 sentences. So I want to know if their oversight, authority, and responsibility has been reduced with this new zoning ordinance. And what about Common Council? I personally really appreciate having a citizen board for oversight. And in contrast, the new Zoning Board of Appeals has numerous paragraphs detailing its role. And I think it would be good to have a very similar format for the Planning Commission in your ordinances. I do understand the need to be more efficient with some of the city zoning ordinances. There have been some really good suggestions made in this one, especially with some of the housing and the ADUs. There have been things that people have been asking for, and it has been detailed, and I'm grateful for that. But I think it would have been good to have some better understanding of what items will always come before the citizen-appointed planning commission rather than just approved by city staff. In conclusion.
Maeve, you're over 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
in perfect conclusion. Thank you.
Dave Rapinski.
Mine's a little different.
Dave, name, address, and then you get your 3 minutes.
Do you want me to go through everything? Taylor, you want me to go through everything?
Dave, I need your name, address. and
David
you get
Rapinski.
3 minutes.
835 Indiana Avenue. I own Dave's Who's In. I came here, came to the city hall about a year ago to get a building permit, and I went through all of the stuff to do it, and they kind of were dismissive to me, put me off, and then on my permit, they wrote porch. So my building inspector was supposed to come by and see the final print. I can show you the print I brought. I can show the final print. I can tell you what I was told to do and did it. Anyway, now they tell me I got to tear my building down. I did everything I was told, beyond everything I was told, and now it looks like you guys are going to change the code to make it work anyway. They didn't. They used a 515 rule on me, and the only thing I knew at the time was the 5-foot rule to the lot line. And anyway, I figured there'd be a compromise if it came anything closer, but I didn't. On one side, it was there already. And when you try to explain everything to, you can tell how I talk. I'm used to training people that are young, so I talk and over-talk. And I was treated dismissively. I was expected to have my building inspector come in, and I gave him the code to the front door. And I work a little later than most people, early in the morning, so my afternoon starts about 4 o'clock after I get done doing my regular stuff. And I've been working on this house for about a year now. Now they tell me to tear it down. And it almost feels like it's ridiculous. I'm just telling you, thank you. It's more than ridiculous. It's almost prejudice. Every time I come in front of you guys, I'm telling you, it's a battle. It should be. I walked out of the city hall that day, I'm thinking, man, this went out pretty good. They're just going to come over and take care of it, tell me what I got to do, and I did it. Tell me, dig a ditch on both sides of the property line, put the drain tile in, fill it with stone. I did it. They told me, I wrote it down, but they told me other things. I did all of those things, and now this week, Drew tells me, you got to tear it down. I had one dissenting because they understood. I did your process. I did everything, and I'm doing it myself, so it takes a little longer. The last time I talked to my building inspector, he says, Dave, when the walls are up, let me know. So that's what I've been doing, just doing it myself, taking my time. They gave me my permit here a couple of weeks back, and then they tell me, no, you can't, you got to tear it down. I didn't get my permit rescinded, but you gladly charged me $600 for it. It just, this whole process that you guys do is really, as you can tell with all of these people that are going through the same thing. If that is the case that you still want me to tear it down, I want a quasi-judicial hearing. I also want the same that Drew Phillips's committee told me I had to tear it down. Just give me the recording of it so I can take care of that. And I guess I'll take care of it. But there's no way I'm going to tear that down. It's beautiful. It looks good in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No one else has signed up.
All right. So the way that we're going to do this is first, we're going to talk about the data center. And I'm also going to announce right now that not during this council session, but the 26-27 council year, so starting after April 20th, there will be another committee of the whole for the data centers. Well, data centers ordinance. We're going to start with the data center, so you want to just address.
Yes. So there was a question posed about, as it stands now in the current ordinance that's being proposed, if a data center were proposed, would it be authorized? As it's currently written, yes. The question that I posed to council leadership, staff discussed this at length. One of the discussion points that we had was brought up: at what point do they become a data center, that hyperscale that everybody's concerned about, versus what exists in our community right now? We've got buildings that qualify as data centers throughout the community. AT&T's got 2 a block from here. So trying to thread that needle of what kind of addresses what everybody's concerned about, but still offers that opportunity to regulate or not hamper existing businesses. So we've got a couple different definitions throughout that ordinance. And one of the recommendations was that not looking at this just as data centers, but looking at one of the questions that was brought up: how do we address issues that come up on things that don't even exist right now? So we know data centers are a large concern, but at what point is there a break point that we automatically require a public hearing and a public discussion on every type of project regardless? So staff didn't feel comfortable that we make a recommendation directly in the ordinance. We wanted to have that discussion at council. Obviously, the feedback here helps with that. We're talking somewhere between 50 to 100,000 square feet. Any project that exceeds that would need a public hearing, regardless of type, regardless of where it falls in at. So that would be something that staff would like council to make that decision, that recommendation that gets worked in. But requiring a hearing on any project over a specific size, regardless of what district it is or what type of project it is. And that would help address a lot of the concerns about projects that don't even exist at this point in time.
All right, now we'll move on to questions that the attendees asked. Do we have a list? All right, Attorney Majerus, start from the top, and then we will direct accordingly.
All right, so Administrator Bradley just spoke to the first question posed by Lisa Salgado. Would a data center be allowed as of right by the city administrator? I will clarify that the city administrator is not the assigned staff person. The current zoning code assigns decision-making authority to the zoning administrator, and that's what this current proposal does. Sam or Taylor, if you'd like to speak further on this question, or I'll move to the next one.
Sam?
Yeah, I just wanted to note as well that I think it was posed in the question, but the assumption is that also in this circumstance where staff is approving that use, the land would have to be comprehensively planned to permit it. It would have to be zoned to permit it. Those are both decisions that happen at the council, plan commission recommendation and the council level. It would have to meet all the development standards that are in here, or you choose to amend as you see fit over time. And then I also wanted to make sure that the public is aware that there are oftentimes other kind of wraparound agreements in relation to very large uses, not just data centers, but other types of industrial uses that I think are important and would come to the council level. Those could be development agreements, those could be public improvement agreements, those could be utility agreements. All of those are worthy policy discussions. I heard some discussion here tonight from the public on considerations for economic incentives or things. Those don't really take place in the zoning code, but are, other conversations that you can have separately. But I just wanted to call out, all of those decisions would still be made at the council level. The only thing the staff would be doing in that circumstance is clarifying whether, the proposed development meets all the adopted ordinances as the council adopts them.
Thank you. Next question.
The next question is specific to natural resource protection regulations. The question was asked in a couple of different formats, so I'll go with Mr. Mahoney's version. Where are the regulations dealing with woodlands, lakeshore, and wetlands?
All right, Sam?
Sure, I can take those. Our intent was to consolidate those within a cumulative natural resource protection overlay district. So when any of those scenarios came up, that overlay zone would be the trigger applied on the zoning map to review any of the environmental concerns. So our intent was not to take anything out. It was just to consolidate it under a single district, which mostly from a mapping purpose is clearer to see when those overlay protections would or would not take place on the map. I should also note that shoreline zoning and floodplain zoning are separate chapters under your ordinance, which this does not address, but are separately enforceable by the city as well.
Next.
The next question is whether the city will be imposing a moratorium on data centers.
I think that would be more of a Alonza. I'll let you speak to that. Sorry, Alder Green.
It's all good. Shortly after Madison put a moratorium in place, news shot around the state that this was a possibility. Before that, we were told bans weren't allowed. So I began drafting, with the help of Liz, a moratorium, but we put it underneath the wrong statutes. So we had a lot of work put into it, and we had to yank it back. We do have another current one in the works, but because we're so close to election, it'll probably be after the election to make sure we have it in front of the current council.
Thank you. Next.
Where are protections for Lake Michigan?
That go back to, who wants to take that, Sam?
Generally, floodplain and shoreline protections are housed in a separate chapter of the Code of Ordinances. So again, it wasn't our intent to take out any environmental protections here. Additionally, I'll note, kind of building off one of the comments, this code actually has more objective standards to require native landscaping, looking at pre-settlement conditions in the Sheboygan area and mandating that specific percentages of the landscaping provided is within those plant species. It also does not allow non-native grasses in most circumstances for landscaping treatments. So I kind of in line with that, but directly in relation to Lake Michigan regulations, those are generally housed in the shoreline zoning chapter, which this rewrite didn't address.
I'll supplement that. The floodplain zoning can be found on Chapter 107 of the Sheboygan Municipal Code. The shoreland wetland zoning can be found in Chapter 109. The general zoning code is Chapter 105.
Sam?
Those standards are pretty set by state law, so the city doesn't have a lot of leeway in how they can adopt floodplain or shoreland. They're pretty prescriptive from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and state statute.
All right, next.
This question doesn't necessarily relate to zoning, but why were we removed from green tier, and why was the sustainability task force dissolved?
So the Sustainability Task Force, you'll have to ask Mayor Sorensen. That was his committee, and he set that up. We don't have any part in that. So that would be a Mayor Sorensen question, and he is currently in Japan. So I would reach out to him. Now, as far as...
The other question relates to green tier.
Who wants that? I don't know.
I don't know.
That...
I have not been involved with Green Tier. I believe the mayor was handling that. I think you were working on it with him, so I'm not familiar. I don't know if Taylor's got any input on that.
Director Zeiner?
I know that our office has talked to Fred Chinook with the Green Tier group, so that's something that we actively talk to him on various projects and things of that nature, but I would echo the sentiment that this is something that the mayor was leading.
So this would be a follow-up for the mayor. So I'm not going to allow questions just because that'll open up a whole thing, and we all have daytime, most of us have daytime jobs. So next.
The next question The next question is, where is the red line comparing this document with the current code? I can try to speak to that, at least to start. The changes to the zoning code are comprehensive and impact every section within the code. It would not be feasible to try to identify where every sentence was either readdressed in the current code or added to or eliminated. So I don't know if Taylor or Sam want to add anything to that.
All right, next.
The next question is, why did Bay Lakes get hired and then Von Briesen to rewrite the code? I think the Bay Lakes hiring is specific to the comp plan, and I believe Taylor already spoke to that.
Director Zeinert?
Nothing much more to add. Thank you for those that attended the comprehensive plan open house on Thursday. As mentioned there and echoed tonight, Director Diane McGinnis Casey has chosen Bay Lake Council or Bay Lake Regional Planning. That's how the consultant was chosen.
Thank you.
That concludes the questions. The rest were just comments.
All right, next, we will open this up to alders. That's going to be, he's going to have to talk to our planning. That, I can't really say anything to that because that's with building inspection. So that really doesn't pertain to us. So I'm going to open this up to alders. We'll have discussion, ask questions, and we'll conduct a straw poll if there's a specific change that is wanted. And if there is, we will, staff will make that adjustment. All right, so we'll start with Alder Bors.
Just to clarify on that.
go on.
So we are not doing the traditional motion and a second discussion and a vote. We will have the discussion, and if a member offers a suggestion at that point, the chair of the committee will ask for a show of hands of support for that suggestion. Staff will make note of that and then incorporate it.
Thank you. All right, Alder Bors.
Thank you, Chair. I'd initially like to revisit a couple of things with the questions that were just answered, and then I'll reserve the right to speak up again later. Regarding the environmental protections that were in zoning code and the reference made to Chapter 107 and 109, is there a reason that the environmental protections were listed in zoning code previously and now not listed in zoning code? And deforestation was mentioned, you know, in terms of clear cutting. I apologize, I don't have as thorough notes maybe, but I know there were other things that were mentioned in terms of woodland, lakeshore, and wetland that probably didn't just fall within floodplain and lakeshore for 107 and 109. So I'm just trying to understand why were they there before and now they don't exist in the new code?
Sam?
So there still is the NRP overlay, the Natural Resource Protection Overlay District in the code. We just consolidated the separate, like, wetlands and stuff all into one single overlay district. So we tried to capture all of those in a single overlay district. The intent was not to get rid of them, but to kind of concentrate them so they're more easily visible on a zoning map. But if there's anything that we missed or anything that, you know, the committee would like us to add back in, happy to do it.
Okay, so if there's specific concerns that anybody who has spoken on those topics has that they would like to share with their alders that we could follow up for additional information that should be included, please do reach out to us on that. And then the other question that I wanted to ask, specific to Von Briesen's contract for the rewrite, I know there were at least two specific questions about approval for that, what process had happened in order to approve the funds that were used for the rewrite for zoning, and if that was approved by council, at what time that was approved.
Administrator Bradley.
I'm just looking here. It looks like Diane McGinnis Casey sent a resolution approving that. October 21st, 2024.
What was the resolution number? Hold on.
I do not have a resolution. It was sent to Attorney Adams, so. I don't know if Attorney Adams approved that from there.
Attorney Majerus, do you have any knowledge of this?
No, I did not do much support for zoning
Okay.
prior.
All right, so we will work on that as far as finding out how that was done.
Okay, and if we need to
Yep.
come back to it later,
Yep.
if Administrator Bradley finds more information on it, I
Yep.
would appreciate that. I'll yield back to whoever else has questions. Thank
All
you,
right,
Chair.
thank you. All right, Alder Perella.
Thank you, Chair. And just two things, and since it is 7:18, I'm proposing that we consider a second discussion on the same subject, the same way. And just because, as you can see, there is a lot to discuss, and we have only 10 minutes, right? So it's just,
Oh, no, that's for attendee participation. We can.
Oh, perfect.
We can
Okay,
go as long
perfect.
as-
So we can decide, later if that, we feel that is. Thank you for that clarification. So when I try to, it is true, it was very difficult to compare. That's common knowledge. It's very hard to compare the previous zoning code with the latest version. However, in that attempt, one thing it is clear is that for under the section of F1, F2, and large facilities, so under the factory provisions, if there is no zoning change, then that doesn't go to Plan Commission or Common Council. So that is clear. It is true. That doesn't happen. And my concern with that, which I share with many tonight, is that if a facility is, especially if it is a large-scale facility, I see that there should be a need for that, regardless if there is a zoning change or not, just because of the nature of and the impact on the community. So I would propose that we consider editing the latest version of our zoning code to incorporate one or two mechanisms that send large factory, large F1, F2, and F1, F2 large facilities and H1, which is the high hazard one, that we reverse to Plan Commission and Common Council approval. And that's because I think I appreciate the streamlining of very small changes for the Plan Commission, but when it comes to larger, more impactful projects, I think that is something that we should try to consider again. And about the fact that we don't want to impact very small factories necessarily, so there may be a need to define small and moderate factories, which is not done right now. If we want to distinguish between large facilities and then definitively H1 and F2 and F1 as well, these categories are all factories. It's just a matter of, again, if there is no zoning change, it doesn't go to Plan Commission and Common Council. So, but we have to find a way to not make that as the process shouldn't be the same for the small electronic shop factory and for a large impactful project, right? So I would like to see that changed.
So are you asking for like a straw poll on that?
Yes, I am. And I apologize if I wasn't clear enough. I can try to clarify that.
Okay, so Attorney Majerus, did you get that?
All right, so we're going to break this down into.
Can I clarify that real quick?
Yes.
So kind of back to that statement we made earlier that was requested was proposed as basing it on square footage regardless of district. So whether it's an industrial or residential, if it's over a certain square footage, then it's very clear expectation to the public on what will be a public versus what could potentially could be a by right based on the zoning code. So we would, from the staff level, it'd be very clear from us instead of parsing out, there could be something in residential that becomes a concern for the community and a project could come in and it's over a certain size, but it's not regulated. So by looking at it by a square footage, if we say every project over 100,000 square foot, regardless of whether it's industrial or residential or commercial, it would still have to go before Plan Commission for a public hearing. That would be our recommendation.
So you are suggesting that we go just by size,
Correct, just a plan.
regardless of the district, but go by size.
Yes.
Okay, and then that could be a good idea. However, they would not include, basically it would be based on what you're saying. For example, when it comes to factories, it would apply only to the large scale factories, except if you reduce the standard that we have right now, because the large scale factories has a standard, right? The F1, F2 doesn't, not size wise, but the large scale factory has a standard in size. So if you go with that standard, then it wouldn't capture other, I think that we have to create another standard to include also those that are not as big. And also the H1, I think that when it comes to factories that have a potential for a hazard, I know that the state protects us in many ways, but I think that too, there would be value added in having it go back to the Plan Commission and Common Council, just because of the nature of the factory.
Alder Perella, in order to effectively address this, I'm going to break it down. What threshold would you like to be imposed for designating a facility as a large-scale F use?
So the large scale already has a standard.
Are you suggesting that be changed?
No, not on the large scale. I'm suggesting that, it goes back to Plan Commission and Common Council, even if there is no zoning change.
Okay, so the first recommendation is to amend the large-scale F use regulations to allow for Plan Commission and Common Council approval. If you support this recommendation to require large-scale F uses to be referred to Plan Commission, please raise your hand.
All right.
How many?
All.
Okay. The next suggestion is to create a middle-scale F use regulation tier.
That is correct. In order to capture that too through the same process.
So we currently treat one cap as 1 acre and the other cap is 100,000 square feet. What range would you suggest be designated mid-scale?
I would like to have the Plan Commission or even the city staff to make a suggestion on that. I can only reasonably assume that the middle ground there would make sense, but a midpoint. But it is an uneducated suggestion. So either city staff helps with that suggestion and we can evaluate it now, or we refer to the Plan Commission as the expert body that can provide that.
I'm going to refer this to Director Zeinart for an idea as far as size.
Yeah, I would lean on our experts. If it's, just to clarify, you're looking for something that's under 1 acre or larger than 1 acre?
It would be over an acre, but under 100 square feet. What do we consider to be a mid-size F use scale, mid-scale?
I think if you did 1,000 to 50,000, Sam, I don't know if you have thoughts as well.
Sam?
Yeah, I can see where you're going. I guess my follow-up question is, what is the intent of how you'd like to regulate that? So when we're creating a new use category, like what's the goal in that? Is that's my question. And then I
Yes.
can follow up with a recommendation.
So per the latest version of the zoning code, regardless of size, an F1, F2 large facility and H1 are not, if there is no zoning change, are not going to be evaluated or voted upon by city plan, plan commission and common council. And since I would like to have that procedure being in place for factories, I want, though, to eliminate the very small ones. So I don't want to have the burden on the plan commission for small factories. But so there is the very large one and the very small one. So I'm considering that if we create a moderate size, and that's just a suggestion, I'm just, trying to come up with a solution so that we then apply the same procedure that we apply for the large facilities also to a mid-size facility, in which even if there is no zoning change, that goes to plan commission and to common council for review.
I gotcha. I understand. So I think the way the current ordinance reads is that, or based on your action, those high hazard and large scale F uses would go. So I think the cleanest way would be to consider the large F uses and the high hazard uses. We can write the administrative procedures to take those to Plan Commission and Common Council as you decide. And then kind of leave everything else as is, which should capture